And I must admit, it's heavily inspired by Vernon Kay's Radio 2 segment when they go into the BBC archives. So I fell down a YouTube rabbit hole looking at videos from the 50s, 60s and 70s about the workplace, about the future of work, about the future of technology. And I found this clip that I thought was brilliant. Al, would you like to introduce it?
So this is an ABC interview from 1974 with the science fiction writer Arthur C. Clarke. You'll probably know him. Shall we listen to the video?
I brought along my son Jonathan, who in the year 2001 will be the same age as I am now. Maybe he will be better adjusted to this kind of world that you're trying to portray.
The big difference when he grows up, in fact, if we wanted to wait for the year 2001, is that he will have in his own house, not a computer as big as this, but at least a console to which he can talk to his friendly local computer and get all the information he needs for his everyday life, his bank statements, his theatre reservations, all the information you need in the course of living in a complex modern society. This will be in a compact form in his own house. He'll have a television screen like these here and a keyboard, and he'll talk to the computer, get information from it, and he'll take it as much for granted as we take the telephone.
I wonder though, what sort of a life would it be like in social terms? I mean, if our whole life is built around the computer, do we become a computer-dependent society and a computer-dependent individuals?
In some ways, but they'll also enrich our society because it'll make it possible for us to live really anywhere we like. Any businessman and executive could live almost anywhere on Earth and still do his business through a device like this.
If you're wondering why it's so noisy, it's because, and you're not watching on YouTube, then it's because they're in a room with a computer that takes up like 1,000 square meters or something, and it's just whirring behind them, all black and white. If you're not watching on YouTube, basically it's black and white, and it's Arthur C. Clarke from 2001 Space Odyssey, and they're wondering what the future looks like. Lee, what were your thoughts? What happened here?
I loved it. I loved how accurate the predictions were. That we'll all have a computer. We'll use it for banking, for booking theatre tickets. We will be able to work from anywhere. We'll favour the country over the city potentially. It's interesting that remote work was even on the cards back in 1974, and it kind of got me thinking. Well, that was 50 years ago, right? Because we're now in 2024 now. So what's the world going to look like in another 50 years in 2074? So I put a little post on LinkedIn to see what people thought. And I left some suggestions. I think they were, is work in office work going to be back? Will we all live on Mars? Will the 4-day work week be a thing? And I think you have the results there, Al.
Yeah, so it's really early days for this, but basically it is skewing towards 4-day work week is standard. Some people have decided that we've settled on Mars, which possibly nobody thought that it was going to be that it's going to be all about the office. Really great comment here from Danielle Wood. And she's basically said that she thinks that we're going to be having virtual meetings in holographic rooms using an avatar. What is interesting, we work on outcomes, so we're better at defining what needs to be achieved and get paid accordingly. This is one thing which I think is already starting to come true. If you talk about the AI, you talk about sort of the gig economy, people are much more likely to get paid on an actual outcome rather than getting paid for turning up 9 to 5 and doing a job. That's interesting. Also, Danielle says that most advisory work will be answered by AI and be so sophisticated then having call centers staffed 24/7, 365 will probably be a thing of the past. That kind of makes sense because AI might be coming for some jobs, not everyone's jobs, but the way I think I see it and a lot of other people see it is that AI is going to take the stuff that is really dull and boring and low level, allowing us all to move up one level and actually become much more skilled at something perhaps a little bit more specific. And then finally, Danny says that co-working spaces have become a bigger thing in all kind of weird and wonderful places so that people who don't want to miss out on the physical social interaction can get it whenever they want it. For example, in a sweet factory. I'm not going to say any more about that, but we have something coming up in September, which is exactly what that's talking about, Danny.
What a cheeky little teaser you gave the people there. I think it's really interesting, and I think as well it kind of gives some perspective around, we talked about generations a couple of weeks ago, and I think it's that, 1974, it might sound like a long time ago, but it's not that long ago. That's when my parents were kind of in their early careers, and to to be that person that goes, what's a world going to look like in 2001? And all of those things at the time seemed so extraordinary, and now they are just day to day. I think as well, what made me smile is, are we a computer dependent society? Oh yes, we are. And I think if you had any doubt on that, that little software update thing that just broke the world is evidence of that. Funny fact, we actually got on a flight a few days after that, and there was an issue with the technology at Split Airport, not because of that, because of something else. And we were delayed on the tarmac, and the captain came on and was like, yeah, we're air traffic controller having to do it manually. And I was like, manually? Of all the things I want to be done manually, directing planes is not one of them. So yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? But it's cool. And I think this could be a fun thing for August, because there's so many on YouTube, and there's lots of very interesting ones as well about women in the workplace in the 50s and 60s. I think it could be interesting. What do you think, Earl?
Yeah, the very fact that Arthur C. Clarke in that videotape was saying, videotape, how old are you? Well, actually, how old I am is almost, I was born in 1977, so I was like conceived in 1976. So it was only 2 years after that video. A little bit disconcerting there. But I think that the fact that he said that a businessman will be able to do his business, and it's, we laugh now, but what are we going to be laughing about the stuff we're saying today? What are we going to be laughing about in 50 years' time? All the stuff that, I wonder if this podcast is going to exist. I wonder if people will be laughing at what we're saying here.
We'll be cancelled by like 2030, won't we?